There is a specific kind of silence that only exists at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not a peaceful silence. It is heavy, loud, and suffocating. It's the kind of silence where the hum of your laptop fan sounds like a ticking time bomb, and every notification chime feels like a tiny drop of hot oil landing on your skin. That was my world for 3 years. I sat in the dark, watching the cursor blink on a spreadsheet, tracking cash flow projections that never seemed to be enough to quiet the panic in my chest. On paper, I was doing everything the internet gurus told me to do. I was executing marketing campaigns, tracking customer acquisition costs, and trying to force my way into the elite spaces of modern entrepreneurship. But inside that dark room, away from the curated Instagram stories and the polished LinkedIn updates, I was completely unraveling. I had built a cage out of my own ambitions, and I was paying for the bars with my sanity. I remember looking at my bank statement that night, seeing the numbers fluctuate, and feeling an overwhelming sense of fraudulence. I had fallen headfirst into the trap of secular hustle culture. I believed the lie that if I just slept less, worked harder, and optimized every single second of my existence, I would finally reach that elusive plateau of security. But the plateau kept moving. The goalposts were constantly shifting. If I hit $10,000 a month, the voice in my head told me I needed 20,000. If my audience grew by 5%, it wasn't fast enough. I was trapped in a relentless cycle of production and consumption, treating my life like a machine that needed to be pushed to its absolute breaking point. My physical body was screaming for rest, my mind was fractured by constant multitasking, and my spirit was completely parched. I had forgotten what it felt like to take a deep, unrestricted breath. What hurts the most to admit is that I wrapped my frantic striving in a blanket of Christian vocabulary. I told myself I was doing it all for the kingdom. I told myself that once I made it, once I cleared my corporate debt and established a massive surplus, then I would become a radical giver. Then I would rest. Then I would spend time in prayer. I was trying to bribe God with my future success while completely ignoring him in my present reality. I treated the creator of the universe like a silent business partner who was only supposed to sign off on my agendas and bless my self-made strategies. I didn't want his guidance. I wanted his endorsement. And because I was relying entirely on my own limited strength, I was constantly standing on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Every minor setback, every canceled contract, and every dip in engagement felt like a direct threat to my worth as a human being. The anxiety wasn't just a mental state, it became a physical weight. My chest always felt tight, like someone was drawing a cord tighter and tighter around my ribs. I couldn't eat without checking my phone. I couldn't converse with my family without mentally responding to emails. I was physically present but emotionally and spiritually absent from my own life. I had become a slave to the very asset I set out to build. The dream of freedom had morphed into a nightmare of constant maintenance. I realized that secular hustle culture doesn't just demand your time, it demands your soul. It requires you to place your trust entirely in your own hands, to believe that you are the ultimate provider, the ultimate protector, and the ultimate judge of your destiny. It is a fragile, terrifying way to live, because when you are the foundation of your own empire, a single tremor can bring the whole house crashing down. That midnight awakening wasn't a sudden, cinematic flash of lightning. It was a slow, agonizing realization that I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't keep waking up at 4 a.m. with my heart racing, frantically checking dashboards to see if my automated systems had generated income while I slept, only to feel a profound emptiness when they did. I had fallen in love with the process of building, but I had lost the purpose behind the creation. I was running on the fumes of my own willpower, and the tank was completely dry. I remember crying out into the empty room, not an eloquent prayer, but a desperate, broken sob. I just said, "I can't carry this anymore. I am breaking under the weight of things I was never meant to hold." It was the first time in years that I was completely honest with myself and completely honest with God about the sheer scale of my exhaustion. We don't talk enough about the spiritual cost of the hustle. We talk about the financial returns, the freedom, the luxury lifestyles, and the prestige of being your own boss. But we rarely talk about the silent erosion of character that happens when you prioritize speed over sustainability and revenue over righteousness. I had allowed the values of a broken, materialistic world to dictate how I operated my business. I was using worldly tactics to chase worldly validation, all while claiming to serve a holy God. The hypocrisy of it hit me like a physical blow. I was preaching faith, but living in absolute, panicked reliance on my own hustle. I knew that something radical had to change. I couldn't just tweak my schedule or download another productivity app. I needed a complete, systemic overhaul of my heart, my mind, and my business model. Closing that laptop that night felt like a small act of defiance against the culture that had consumed me. It was an admission of defeat, but it was also the first step toward true liberation. I had to face the uncomfortable truth that my business had become an idol. It was the place where I sought my identity, my security, and my significance. When the business was up, I felt like a king. When it was down, I felt like a failure. God was not going to compete with an idol for the throne of my life. He had to allow me to hit the wall of my own limitations so that I would finally stop running from His grace. It was a painful, stripping process, but it was the only way to clear the wreckage and build something that would actually last, something that wouldn't require me to lose my soul in order to gain the world. Surrendering is easy to talk about in a church pew on Sunday morning, but it is excruciatingly difficult to practice when your livelihood is on the line on Monday afternoon. For me, the hardest thing to surrender was the idol of scale. We live in a digital landscape that is obsessed with exponential growth. If you aren't scaling, you're dying. If your team isn't expanding, you're failing. I had internalized this mindset so deeply that my entire self-worth was tied to vanity metrics. I wanted a larger audience, higher revenue numbers, and a bigger footprint in my industry, not because the market actually required it, but because my ego demanded it. I wanted the prestige of saying I ran a high-growth, seven-figure agency. But as I stood in front of my strategy board, looking at the complex systems required to maintain that kind of velocity, I felt a deep, sickening realization that this path was killing my spirit. The turning point came when I had to look at the actual cost of my growth. To sustain the level of scaling I was chasing, I was having to compromise on things that were non-negotiable. I was taking on corporate debt to finance aggressive marketing funnels that didn't align with my core values. I was accepting clients who treated my team poorly simply because their retainers kept our cash flow afloat. I was spending so much time managing a bloated, stressful infrastructure that I had zero time left to actually serve the people who trusted me. I had traded deep, transformative impact for shallow, wide-reaching exposure. God began to convict me through a simple, sobering question that echoed in my heart during a moment of quiet. What does it profit you to scale your business to the ends of the earth if you lose the capacity to love, to rest, and to reflect my character? Letting go of vanity metrics feels like a form of professional suicide when you're surrounded by a culture that worships numbers. I had to consciously decide to stop comparing my behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's highlight reel. I had to unsubscribe from the newsletters, stop muted the influencers who made me feel inadequate, and deliberately turn my eyes inward. I began to review my client list, my product offerings, and my operational expenses through the lens of stewardship rather than ownership. I realized that everything I had belonged to God, and my job wasn't to force it to grow into a monster that devoured my peace. My job was to manage it faithfully, with excellence and integrity, within the boundaries He had set for me. If He wanted it to grow, it would grow according to His timing, not my frantic manipulations. The practical execution of this surrender was terrifying. It meant having difficult conversations. It meant writing emails to high-paying clients to let them know that our alignment had shifted and that we would be winding down our working relationship. It meant watching my projected monthly recurring revenue drop on a spreadsheet and intentionally choosing not to panic. My heart raced every time I sent one of those emails. The old, hustle-driven voice inside my head screamed that I was destroying everything I had worked so hard to build. It told me I would end up bankrupt, that I was ruining my reputation, and that I was being completely irresponsible. But underneath that loud, frantic clamor of fear, there was a still, small voice of peace that whispered, "Trust me. Clear the space so I can actually build through you." We often mistake bigness for blessing. We look at a massive platform or a high-revenue enterprise and automatically assume that God is in it. But sometimes, bigness is just the result of human striving, and it carries a weight that human shoulders were never designed to bear. I had to learn the beauty of a right-sized business. A business that provides abundantly for my needs, honors my team, and serves our clients with deep integrity, without requiring me to sacrifice my health or my relationship with God on the altar of secular ambition. When I surrendered the idol of scale, I gained something far more valuable: room to breathe. I gained the ability to shut down my computer at 5 o'clock and enjoy a meal without checking my metrics. I gained the capacity to actually listen to people instead of viewing them as mere leads or conversion rates in a sales funnel. This process of letting go requires a profound shift in trust. It forces you to answer the question, who is your true source of supply? Is it your marketing strategy, your launch plan, or your automated email sequences? Or is it the living God who clothes the lilies of the field and feeds the birds of the air? When your business becomes your God, you live in constant terror of market shifts, algorithm updates, and economic downturns. But when God is the foundation of your business, you can look at a changing economic landscape with absolute calm, knowing that the one who called you is entirely faithful to sustain you. Surrendering the idol of scale didn't mean I stopped being ambitious. It meant my ambition was rescued from vanity and placed in the service of true kingdom impact. I had to learn to value audience trust over audience size. It is better to have 100 people who are deeply impacted by your work, who trust your integrity, and who are truly helped by your products, than to have 100,000 people who are just numbers in a database. When you focus on serving the few God has placed in front of you with absolute excellence, the revenue takes care of itself. The pressure to constantly launch, constantly pitch, and constantly self-promote begins to melt away. You realize that you don't need to shout to be heard when you are speaking truth with love and clarity. The surrender of scale was the most painful pruning season of my entrepreneurial career, but it was absolutely necessary to prepare the soil for fruit that would actually remain. Realignment is the practical application of surrender. Once you clear away the noise of vanity metrics and worldly expectations, you are left with a blank canvas and a crucial question. How do I actually run a business in a way that honors God? For me, this meant shifting my focus entirely from revenue generation to systemic realignment. I had to restructure every single facet of my business model so that it reflected kingdom principles rather than high-conversion secular manipulation. This wasn't just a spiritual exercise, it was an operational revolution. I began to look at my automated systems not as tools to extract wealth from an audience, but as mechanisms to deliver real, consistent value and protect my personal peace. Automation, when used correctly under a framework of stewardship, isn't about laziness. It's about creating boundaries that preserve your life for what truly matters. I started by auditing my financial systems. I had to face the reality of my corporate debt and create an aggressive, disciplined plan to eliminate it entirely. Borrowing money to fund lifestyle growth or unproven marketing strategies is a form of bondage that keeps you tethered to fear. I wanted my business to be entirely debt-free so that I would never be forced to make a compromise out of financial desperation. When you owe no one anything except love, you possess an incredible level of professional freedom. You can say no to lucrative opportunities that don't align with your ethics. You can speak the truth with total candor because your survival isn't dependent on keeping a specific client happy at the expense of your values. Realignment means prioritizing absolute financial transparency and integrity over short-term cash flow spikes. Next, I had to realign my relationship with my audience. In the secular marketing world, people are often viewed through the lens of psychological manipulation. You find their pain points, you press into them to create urgency, and then you position your product as the only magical solution to their problems. It's an extraction-based model designed to trigger impulsive purchasing behavior. I had to repent of ever using those tactics. I realized that audience trust is a sacred currency that must be guarded with total honesty. I began to design my sales funnels to empower people rather than exploit them. I stripped out artificial scarcity, false timers, and exaggerated claims from my copy. I wanted my marketing to be so transparent that even if someone chose not to buy from me, they would still leave our ecosystem feeling respected, valued, and encouraged. This shift toward total integrity changes the way you view competition. When you are chasing revenue under the secular model, everyone in your niche is a competitor trying to take a piece of your market share. You live in a constant state of scarcity and defensive posturing. But when you realign your business with God's sovereignty, you realize that there is no competition in the kingdom. God has uniquely equipped you with a specific voice, a specific story, and a specific assignment. The people He wants you to serve cannot be stolen by someone else's superior marketing algorithm. This realization allows you to celebrate other entrepreneurs in your space instead of envying them. It allows you to operate from a posture of radical abundance, knowing that your supply is locked into heaven, not the fluctuating trends of a digital marketplace. Building automated systems with total integrity also meant changing how I treated my time. I had to build software systems that served as walls around my personal life, rather than bridges for work to invade my weekends. I automated my onboarding, my invoicing, and my initial inquiries so that my business could run efficiently without requiring my constant, hands-on intervention. This wasn't about scaling up to make more money while doing less work. It was about protecting my capacity to be a healthy human being. It allowed me to step away from the screen, to spend hours in quiet reflection, to read scripture without looking at the clock, and to show up fully for the people in my community. The systems became a tool of stewardship, keeping the business contained within its proper place so it could no longer consume the rest of my existence. Realignment is a daily discipline. It is not a one-off decision you make at a conference and then forget about. Every single morning, when I open my computer, I have to consciously lay down my natural tendency to control, to push, and to rely on my own strength. I have to ask myself if the tasks I have scheduled for the day are born out of a desire to please people and stack up achievements, or if they are born out of a genuine desire to love God and serve my neighbor through my work. When your motives are realigned, the work itself changes. The tension leaves your shoulders. The heavy, frantic energy of the hustle is replaced by a focused, joyful diligence. You work hard, but you work from a place of rest rather than working for rest. The reward of realignment isn't always a massive spike in your bank account, though God often blesses obedience with sustainable prosperity. The true reward is the clean conscience and the unshakable peace that comes from knowing you are operating with total integrity. You can look your clients in the eye, you can look your team in the eye, and you can stand before God in prayer without feeling like you are hiding a web of compromises behind a polished facade. You realize that a smaller, debt-free, high-integrity business that operates in divine alignment is infinitely more profitable than a massive, chaotic empire built on the shifting sands of worldly compromise. You are finally building on the rock, and when the storms of life and economic uncertainty come, that structure will stand firm because its foundation is secure. If you are watching this right now, and you are currently sitting in that dark room I occupied for so many years, if your chest is tight, if you are drowning in corporate debt, or if you are completely exhausted by the relentless demands of modern hustle culture, I want you to take a deep, unrestricted breath. Listen to me closely. You do not have to live this way. The anxiety you are feeling is not a necessary tax you have to pay for success. It is a warning sign that you are trying to carry a weight you were never created to hold. You were never meant to be the ultimate provider for your life or your business. You were created to be a steward, a branch connected to the vine, relying entirely on the life-giving flow of a Savior who cares deeply about every single detail of your existence, including your career. The peace that conquers panic doesn't arrive when your bank account reaches a certain number, or when your business hits an arbitrary scaling milestone. It arrives the moment you step out of the driver's seat and surrender total control to God. It comes when you can look at your metrics, your problems, and your bills and say with absolute conviction, Lord, this business belongs to you. These clients are yours. This revenue is yours. I will show up today. I will work with excellence. I will treat people with love, and I will leave the outcome entirely in your hands. That shift from ownership to stewardship is where panic dies. Because when the business belongs to Him, its success or failure is no longer a definition of your worth. It is simply an assignment you are managing for a season. Secular hustle culture tells you that rest is a reward you earn after you have exhausted yourself. It treats rest like a luxury for the successful or a weakness for the lazy. But in the economy of God, rest is a commandment, a weapon, and a profound declaration of faith. When you choose to shut down your automated systems on a weekend, when you choose to log off at a reasonable hour, and when you refuse to let anxiety rob you of your sleep, you are making a powerful spiritual statement. You are telling the enemy, you are telling the culture, and you are telling your own fearful heart that your life is sustained by the grace of God, not the speed of your hustle. Rest is an act of trust. It is proof that you believe God is working on your behalf even when your hands are still. I want to challenge you to step into a new paradigm of execution. Faith-driven execution isn't passive or lazy. It doesn't mean you sit around waiting for a miracle while neglecting your responsibilities. Kingdom entrepreneurs are some of the most diligent, excellent, and creative people on the face of the earth. But the difference lies in the source of our energy. We don't execute out of fear, desperation, or a need to prove ourselves. We execute out of love, gratitude, and a desire to reflect the excellence of our Creator. We build automated systems to create order out of chaos. We manage our cash flow with discipline because we are caretakers of God's resources. We show up for our clients with total presence because we see them as individuals made in the image of God, not just transactions on a spreadsheet. The world is desperate for businesses built this way. People are tired of being manipulated, tired of high-pressure sales pitches, and tired of the empty promises of superficial success. When you build a business God's way, your integrity becomes your greatest competitive advantage. Your peace becomes your marketing strategy. Your joy becomes a beacon of light in a deeply cynical and exhausted marketplace. People will be drawn to your work not just because your products are excellent, though they should be, but because there is a distinct, undeniable aroma of peace, stability, and truth surrounding everything you touch. You become a living testimony that it is entirely possible to succeed in commerce without compromising your soul. Don't let the fear of missing out dictate your strategy. Don't let the pressure to scale force you back into the cage of anxiety. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind doesn't obsess over numbers at 3 a.m. A sound mind doesn't sacrifice relationships for revenue. A sound mind knows its boundaries, trusts its source, and executes its assignment with steady, unshakable confidence. You have been called into this entrepreneurial space for such a time as this. Not to conform to the frantic patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, showing the marketplace what true, sustainable, kingdom-driven prosperity actually looks like. As we close this late-night conversation, I want you to make a decision. Let tonight be the final night you operate under the heavy, broken yoke of secular hustle culture. Let tonight be the night you lay down the idol of scale, the vanity metrics, and the self-made pressures that have been suffocating your spirit. Hand the keys of your business over to the one who created you, who called you, and who is entirely capable of establishing the work of your hands. Step into his divine rest, realign your systems with total integrity, and watch how he takes your small, faithful steps of obedience and turns them into something of eternal significance. The journey won't always be easy, and the culture will constantly try to pull you back into the race, but the peace that awaits you on the other side of surrender is worth every single thing you have to let go of. Thank you for sitting down with me tonight. If this testimony resonated with your spirit, if it brought a sense of conviction or comfort to your heart, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on it. Don't just rush off to the next piece of content or the next task on your to-do list. Sit in the quiet for a moment. Ask God what specific area of your business, your finances, or your mindset you need to surrender to Him right now. Let Him clear out the noise so He can build a foundation that will never shake. Remember, you are a steward of an incredible calling. Walk in that authority, protect your peace, and execute your assignment with absolute excellence. I will see you in the next conversation. Until then, stay grounded, stay faithful, and rest secure in the knowledge that His grace is more than enough for you.